Good evening and welcome to episode number 5 of Real and Raw Conversations with Shalina. But before we begin, an acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture, the hopes and dreams of Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander peoples and elders, past, present and emerging. For it is their land on which I work, live, love and conduct business. And it is their continuing connection to land, water, sea, and community that I will always recognize and uphold. I am committed to and will continue to celebrate, honor, and respect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's stories, culture, traditions, as well as their unique cultural and spiritual relationships to country. Sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and forever will be Aboriginal land. Hello, welcome. This is episode numero 5 of Real and Raw Conversations with Shalina, and tonight I am talking about fatherless homes. Part 2, we're talking about the effects of fatherlessness. Now, I have daddy issues. Yep, you heard that right. I have issues because I don't have a dad. Bet you didn't see that one coming. And, you know, not having a dad has affected me in my daily life since the time that I was a child. So obviously I haven't had a dad since I was, 15 months old, right? So in this episode, I am talking about the effects of fatherlessness. In my last episode, I talked about the different types. So tonight is all about the different effects. But can I just remind you that it is not just women who have daddy issues. Anyone, regardless of age, gender, race, nationality, you name it, daddy issues does not discriminate. So, we're always going to have issues. If one or both parent is absent, you can best believe those issues are going to be there. So, yes, I have daddy issues and I ain't afraid to admit it. And I don't have a dad and I have a major issue with it. And, this is not something that needs to be sexualized, glamorized, laughed at, ridiculed. Fatherlessness is not a joke, and it's not something that we choose. So given the fact that, as I stated in my last episode, there is more than 20 million children worldwide, and they live in homes without the presence of a father. And, one person living without their father is bad enough. So 20 million, this is a crisis situation, I say that it is. So yes, tonight I'm talking about the effects of fatherlessness, and my list is not concurrent. So, there are things that we feel and we do and we act and we do it consciously or subconsciously. And due to the trauma, due to the trauma of not having that, it is a trauma. And I personally do relate to quite a bit of what I'm about to, read out to you guys. And once again, these are all subjective, and it is subjective to individual circumstances. These effects, they directly relate to my last episode of the types of fatherlessness. So, different types, different effects, not one shoe fits all. So let's get on with it. Effect number 1. So effect number 1 would be in your career or at your job. So you're probably wondering, how the hell does your job have anything to do with not having a father? And yes, it's strange, it's weird, but hear me out because I have seen this happen and I have done a few of these things myself. I'm not saying I did everything on this list, right? So the effect of fatherlessness when it comes to your job can be the person who is the super achiever. This is the perfectionist, and this is the people who are subconsciously, they are trying to prove their worth, that they have this desire to be complimented. And, we want people to recognize how good we are because we feel like our fathers did not. And that transcribes onto our work when we are working, when we're at a new job, learning things, trying to please the people around you. But I guess more than anything, you're trying to, show how good you are. And sometimes it's a reflection of your own life. Number 2 would be this. Once again, I'm talking about career and work. Difficulty in dealing with conflicts. So, this is the person who is the ticking time bomb at work. You kind of know that this person's not really good at dealing with conflict situations. Sometimes this person is the way they are because they have grown up in unhealthy environments. And it means that when they've grown up in an unhealthy environment, and when it comes to conflict, certain things they might take it out of context, they might misunderstand, or maybe they haven't been in the type of environment where they sit down and talk about it. So if you haven't grown up in that environment and you haven't seen two adults around you sit down and just talk it out, the chances are you're going to have that same type of conflict management issue when you get to work. Number 3, being passive at work. So this is a person who they do whatever they're told, and they do it because they're insecure. Even if they know they shouldn't, even if they're a bit like, oh, I'm not sure if I should be doing this, they're eager to please. And usually that transcribes from having, low self-worth, which I've done that. And they want people to like you, because when people like you, you stop blaming yourself and you don't feel like a victim. So when people don't like you, you end up blaming yourself. And, maybe it was your father who was not there, and maybe, you're sitting there wondering what is wrong with you and things like that, right? So people do that because, and they're passive at work because of their insecurities from home. Now, the next one is anger towards authority figures. Now, this is anger towards, colleagues like, your bosses, supervisors, any colleague that seems to have that sort of power, you have that anger towards them. And it's, generally it is the males that you may have the anger towards. It just depends on the situation once again. But, stereotypical gender roles see fathers as the authoritarians, and not having that type of authority figure, you might find it hard to adjust and take orders. And that's hard. It's hard to adjust when you've come from a home where you didn't have to, or you didn't have a male there. So you sort of feel like, oh, I don't want to have to hear this person, right? So you almost feel like telling them to GTFO. Another effect of fatherlessness when you are working is, instability. So you change your job frequently. And I know that I have done that in the past. I have changed my jobs frequently. It wasn't entirely to do with fatherlessness, but I can see where that's coming from. So it's, it could be the feeling of, not being good enough, or growing up in that unstable home. And sometimes we project that onto our lives, fear of being stuck in a place where, you can't get out of. So that is sort of the reason why you might be unstable. It's instability in your own lives. And it happens, it can come out in your relationships, work, friendships. It comes out in many ways, one of them being work. So another one is, and this is once again, I'm talking about career and work, is having this attachment to your bosses or colleagues or the father figure. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to do that, but it's never really a good thing to get attached to anyone, because it does not take someone very long to break you. So being attached is very natural and healthy when you are seeking that, when you never got to have that. However, it does happen at work. It can happen at work. I've seen this happen, but you have to break away. At some point, you have to try and break away. It's hard, but it has to be done. Otherwise, it's gonna ruin you when you are trying to work. And depending on where you work, sometimes you have to deal with daily reminders of an absent parent or fatherlessness or motherlessness. Now, I used to work in a service center, and I used to see fathers and daughters, fathers and sons come in, and it's almost like it's like salt on your wound. And it happens. It's unfortunate, but it happens. And only people who have, experienced this would understand what I'm trying to say. It's you're at a workplace where you have to see this for whatever job you're doing, customer service, retail, or you work for the government. I used to work in the for Service New South Wales. So this is why it can affect you in many ways. So that would be some of the ways that fatherlessness can affect you at work. Now, this is one that affects a lot of us, is a father's absence during your milestones. Now, not having a dad means that they're going to miss, and it hurts a lot of us that the person who's supposed to be there is not, for whatever reason. And I'm talking about first day of school, first day of high school, TAFE, university, graduations. My mom cried on the day that I graduated because it was such a huge day, and knowing that somebody who should have been there was not there, that was painful. Unfortunately, it happened, but that was freaking painful. So first job, you're getting a license, learning to drive, your first relationship, marriage, children, house. This, knowing that the person who's supposed to be there is not there, that just, it's a pain that you can't explain, especially when that person is alive. We'd all love to share it with our fathers, but some of you actively choose not to be there. And shame on you for choosing your ego over your child. And of course, obviously, if the father has died, is deployed, sick, can't make it, that's a different type of pain. And I can't do justice for that. And to try and explain it, that, how that would feel, I wouldn't do it justice. And that's not the type of fatherlessness I faced. So I empathize with it, but I can't imagine how painful it would have been for you. Now, the third type of effect is financial. Now, of course, you're going to be affected when you're trying to survive on a single income, right? Now, the effect of fatherlessness financially is so severe that it is estimated that 90% of runaway children have no father. Now, and it's also estimated that children from absent father homes are 4 times more likely to be poor or living in poverty. Now, being a fatherless child means that, your father may or may not pay child support or financial support, right? So it's little or none. If you're lucky, you might get something. And, this means that children, they miss out on toys, they miss out on adequate clothes, on shoes, on going on excursions, on education. Basic necessities are things that they miss out on because of the lack of financial support. And this then turns into the child feeling like they need to commit crimes in order to get the money. Now, I'm not talking, 5-6-year-olds, but it happens. And, it is so sad because crime can become an addiction. And I will be talking about that soon, but crime can become a major, major addiction. Now, it's also, finances are hard because, you only have that one side of the family to help you in financial need if you're lucky. So that is also an effect of fatherlessness when it comes to the financials, because you only have that one side, and, you might only just have that one person being the mother, the single income earner, bringing the money home. And it's not easy. You single parents out there, exactly how hard it is. It is not easy. It is not easy at all. Now, there's also the inheritance. Now, it's not, not all of us are out here for the money trying to get greedy, but inheritance is also a big thing because you only get the inheritance from one family instead of the other. Imagine a 2-parent family versus a 1-parent family, and the inheritance and the financial help and how hard it can be. Now, because this is exactly what my dad did, refused to pay child support. It could only afford 40 cents a day. Now, a whole 40 cents a day, like, there are so many things that you can do with it, right? I can't even think, but yes, apparently there is. Apparently you can do a lot with it, right? And, the audacity of some people is unbelievable, that they think that they can actually offer such a ridiculous amount. like you woke up feeling so audacious that morning that you were like, hey, I'm going to offer you a whole 40 cents a day and let's see how you survive with my child on it. Good work. Round of applause for that one. That is just showing that you have no worth for human life as a parent if you choose to do that, to offer that much. You are the reason why they are here, and you actively decide that they are not worth anything more than 40 cents. I mean, hello, bit of ridiculousness going on here. Excuse me. Now, another effect of fatherlessness is criminal activities. I forgot the activities word here. Can you see how well I was prepared? Let's just go with criminal now. So, lack of parental involvement, supervision, or monitoring, or lack of that parent and child closeness, that leads to criminal behaviors. Now, the more opportunities that a child has to interact with his or her biological father or a father figure from a young age, the less he or she is likely to commit crimes or have any contact with the juvenile justice system. Now, lack of parental involvement in a child's life can lead to antisocial behavior, gang involvement. And the reason why people get so involved in gangs sometimes is that sense of belonging. It becomes a part of your identity. And that feeling of belonging is so important, especially to people when they are growing up. And as a result, children end up hanging out with people who end up doing wrong things, or they look up to people who they're like older gang members and they look up to them as role models because they don't have a role model at home to look after. Now, delinquency and youth crime, such as theft, burglaries, and that is also an effect. And studies have shown that children from absent father homes are more likely to shoplift and become chronic shoplifters. And that is studies showing this. It's not me just pulling it out of thin air because I felt like it. No. Now, in America alone, it is said, it has been proven, researched, that 85% of youth in prison have absent fathers. So fatherless children are more likely to offend and go to jail as adults. And that's really sad because people turn to crime for so many reasons. And one of them is money, which goes back to my aforementioned point of how hard it is financially for children and parents to survive. It's so hard surviving on one income for yourself. Imagine having children and how hard that is. It is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Now, number 5, this is another effect, education. And your education can get affected. Now, this is Exhibit A over here. 71% of dropouts are said to be fatherless, and they leave school before the age of 16. Exhibit A right here. I'm an example of that. I also got kicked out, but who's counting? Fatherlessness can also contribute to poor grades, especially if this absence was unexpected or there has been abuse and trauma involved, or even if the parents are together, but you're going home to a very, very toxic, unhealthy environment. This also is a reason for poor grades, lack of desire to study, truanting, just not bothered at all academically. And single parent families are unable, not all the time, but sometimes unable to afford tuition or courses to help their child at school. And I face that. And I don't know if my father was around, I would have gone to school after past 16. I don't know that. But what I know is that I was so messed up in my mind at that point that I was not bothered. I did not want to go. I didn't want to be there. And I do sometimes feel like if my dad was around, maybe things would have been different, but I guess you're never going to know. You are never, ever going to know that one, are you? Now, so Tanya's saying, yes, what time it's saying. Yes, what time it's saying. No worries, Tanya. And Raylene is saying, talking the talk because Shalina. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Avinash is saying, you have no clue whatsoever. Speak to real alienated fathers who get no support from anyone but whose child support payment is good enough, but his love for children isn't. Look, I see where you're coming from and I know what you're saying because there are alienated fathers out there whose mothers have stopped them from seeing their kids. I know that. But at this present moment, I am talking about the effects of fatherlessness on children and the effects of those fathers who have chosen not to be in their child's life. What you're saying, however, is a conversation for another day, and I am on your side because I know that this happens. So I agree with you. I agree with what you are saying 100%. Okay, so please don't think that we're all against you, or that I don't support fathers who have been alienated. I know that happens. And I think that is wrong, because if you watched my last episode, I said it straight out that any mother who purposely stops their children from seeing their child, that is despicable behavior. Honestly, it is. And I do not agree with that. So I see where you're coming from and I agree with you. And we can have a chat about this later if you want to. Now, number 6 is relationships. Now, with friends and family, this one's a weird one, and this is something that I endured myself. This is something that I went through myself. It contributes to your mental health, and it's jealousy when you see people around you who have fathers, especially with your friends and your family, and that jealousy that you feel. I felt that, and I know a number of children who have grown up without fathers and mothers. They have felt that, and it is hard. It is so difficult. And you are entitled to your jealousy. You are entitled to feeling like that, because something so natural that you should have had was not yours. And that affects you. It affects you for life. Another thing with relationships is, step families, accepting a father figure. Not everybody is welcoming with open arms to father figures. And I know that I've even had trouble with that in the past. And so many people do. And, once you feel that disconnect with a potential stepfather, it is hard to mend that, and it's hard to make something work. When it comes to romantic relationships, you end up feeling like you won't be enough, or that you won't measure up to your partner's expectations, regardless of all your achievements. You think you won't be good enough. And I know I've felt like that in the past, and I know many people who have. And it comes from a fear of abandonment. You actually fear what's going to happen, that they're going to abandon you, that they're going to leave you, which is why sometimes you end up being so passive in a relationship, because you're scared of voicing your opinion. You're scared of what's going to happen if you stand up for yourself. And, it's hard to sometimes maintain these relationships because of tempers or inability to control anger, which is sometimes stemmed from fatherlessness, not all the time. And the fact that you may not have ever seen a healthy relationship and you don't know what to expect in a relationship. This comes from personal experience of, I haven't seen healthy relationships around me. So when I have been in them, I've questioned my sanity and how I felt about it. And I was like, is this what a relationship's supposed to be like? Like, I'm not sure. And, you question yourself. And it's, these are things that you need to discuss with your partner beforehand. When you're in a relationship, you'll fear things like this. Otherwise, it's going to resurface in your relationship, and your relationship is not going to last. I'm telling you now. Number 7 is ethnicity. Now, I'm not going to comment on other ethnicities except for my own. I'm Indian, and most of you Indians would know out there that being Indian means that mental health is not a priority. It also means that domestic violence is pretty much prevalent. And my mom went through domestic violence at the hands of my dad. And, people told my mom to be friends with my dad when I was much younger. Absolute ridiculousness, but that's what happened. And even though my dad had committed acts of domestic violence, in our culture, in Indian culture, domestic violence is, it's not something that's taken seriously. It's something that is ingrained into the culture. And it was hard growing up as a fatherless child because of, one, being Indian, but because patriarchy is so entrenched in our daily lives. And it's even worse if you have a daughter, because, hello, sexism, it exists. Now, and nobody really asked me if I was okay or acknowledged the fact that I didn't have a dad. And I feel like a lot of children out there go through that. People don't sit down and start talking to them about how they're feeling or what's happening in their minds, because it's hard to realize that. I would, but somebody who's grown up in 2-parent families, it's not something that comes to their head very quickly. And I've noticed that so often, and it was like a normal thing I had to deal with, not having a dad, and I had to deal with it. And 29 years later, I'm still dealing with it, because that's what happens when you come from a fatherless home. It's not something that just ends and your life just starts somewhere else. No, that's not how it works. And I do think that ethnicity does have a very big part to play in the way that fatherlessness is perceived and handled. Ethnicity plays a very big part. Now, this one's a bit of Controversial one, I guess you could say, but I've had struggles with this myself, and so have quite a few people that I have spoken to. It's spirituality and religion. Now, using the words Father, our Father, side note, I don't think God has a gender, but, that's a conversation for another day. But it's confusing. It is really confusing for a little child to be taught religion. You're calling God Father, yet you don't have a physical dad there present. Can I tell you how confusing that is? It is really confusing. And it's also, you start, and this applies to people who obviously are religious or believe in God. Now, if you don't believe in God, you're probably stuck in your own mind, questioning the universe, questioning the world. Why is it like this? But when it comes to spirituality and religion, I know personally I have questioned God for his absence. I've blamed God for my father's absence, or sometimes you leave religion because you don't think it's real. You can't find the answers there. Or you get closer to religion because that's where you do find the answers. Like I said, it's controversial. You can't say whether it's right or wrong. It's just up to a person's mind what they believe. Sometimes they become closer to God. I do think I have got closer to God, but that's my own personal preference, but I'm just putting it out there. We're all different. But sometimes it's this notion of forgiveness and spiritual bypass that a lot of people talk about. And I think that that's not something that should be put on somebody. You can't tell somebody to forgive and move on and forget, because that's not cool. That's not right. Before you tell them that, they need to process their emotions and how they feel about their abandonment. Now, number 9 is psychological issues, which of course, anybody from a broken home is going to have psychological issues. You can't escape that. You've got behavioral issues. So these are things like attachment issues, abandonment issues, pleasing behaviors, constantly trying to please because you feel like you're scared that you won't be, once again, good enough for people. It also, it affects your child development. It affects your development as a child through to teenagehood, because you're constantly trying to make sense of the world and why your father doesn't want you, and you can't figure it out. And sometimes you never actually find those answers, which is actually quite sad. There's also studies showing that, suicide, fatherlessness is linked directly to suicide and suicidal ideation. It is also linked to poor relationship with your own self. So this means that you have a deflated self-worth, deflated self-love. It's those feelings of hating yourself, thinking that there's something wrong with yourself. And that also leads to self-harm. It does. Excuse me there. Fatherlessness also leads to mental health disorders. So things like histrionic personality disorder. Absent father syndrome is a thing. It is actually a thing. And obviously depression, anxiety, eating disorders, bipolar, these are all effects of fatherlessness. Now, there is also self-deprecating behaviors. So, this is also a form of self-harm. So this is when you are belittling yourself, criticizing yourself, putting yourself down, speaking negatively about yourself. And it can also be deemed as attention-seeking behavior. And sometimes we do it to, cover up our shortcomings, which is sometimes not having a dad. Now, it is also important to note that fatherless children are at greater risk of suffering physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. They are also 5 times more likely to have experienced physical abuse and emotional maltreatment, and they are 100 times higher risk at fatal abuse. So keep that in mind with people who don't have dads. There is so much going on in their lives and in their minds. The younger they are, the harder it is for them to process things. And seeing a psychologist or a counselor from a young age when parents have split up would greatly benefit them, for sure. Now, number 10 is health. Fatherlessness can affect your health. And it is studied and shown that children who come from broken homes are more likely to abuse alcohol, take up smoking, drugs, substance abuse. They are more likely to overeat or undereat, so eating disorders, as a form of self-punishment. So sometimes we punish ourselves because, some of us don't know why our father has chosen to abandon us. And sometimes children feel like it's their fault. It's not their fault. It's never your fault. But we feel like it is their fault, and they need to alleviate that internalized pain. And how do they do it? It comes out on them physically, mentally, but physically especially. Self-harm, cutting yourself. So if you notice these things, you know that somebody's going through some sort of pain here. So it is not, like I said before, it is not just children from fatherless homes who go through this. The list is not concurrent. However, this is one of the effects of fatherlessness. Now, number 2 is holiday seasons. Now, this is sort of portrayed by media and through history, and it can bring upon a lot of psychological trauma. Easter, Christmas Day, Father's Day, it is so hard on children, especially on Father's Day, especially because it is glamorized worldwide. It is, that itself inflicts trauma on the child, and it is so hard on especially on that day to deal with how you're feeling, especially during Christmas as well. It's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. It is insane. And the amount of people that I've spoken to who did not have dads, and I asked them, how do you end up feeling on Christmas Day? It's the same thing as me. They're like, I just want this whole Christmas, New Year day to be over. And that's all they want, because it is traumatic. It's, the portrayal in the media of the happy families and whatnot. It is heartbreaking, and it is hard. For sure, it is hard. Easter, not so much. I'm not sure. I haven't really associated with many people who have, gone through Easter, because maybe it's because I don't celebrate. I'm not Christian or Catholic or anything like that. I don't celebrate it. But Christmas and Father's Day, for sure, I have talked to so many people who have, it's days where they want to shut off from the world. And I totally understand that, because it's one of those crucial days that they're just like, is this necessary? Is it not? So this is one of the, the effects of fatherlessness on these holiday seasons. And I know when I was at school, we used to celebrate. Everybody was talking about it. And, you go home feeling like crap. You honestly do. And it's not something that you can stop, but it's something that it really does affect you. Now, number 12 is sexual behaviors. Now, it has been studied that fatherless children engage in sexual behaviors from an early age. And it is also used as an escape from reality and as self-validation. And a lot of people do use sex as self-validation, that I guess it's that feeling of trying to feel like you're good enough. It's like a form of self-discovery. And also role plays. Now, I have spoken to quite a few people, and I did my research on this, and role plays are they have a very big impact when sort of exploring your sexuality, the daddy role play. Yes, I'm talking about it. I know I am. And some men don't perceive this well, but it is part of the effect of fatherlessness that, the bedroom role plays, calling somebody daddy, it's real, it happens. And one of the reasons is fatherlessness. That doesn't mean that everybody who does this in the bedroom has an issue. No, but it is one of the issues. Now, also, fatherlessness does affect, your desires in the bedroom. Yes, it is studied and proven. I'm not making this up. Desires of control, desires of domination. It also affects the content that you view, to put it politely. Now, when it comes to women, and I'm only talking about women here, I'm not going to talk about how fatherlessness affects men, because I wouldn't be able to do it justice. I don't know how fatherless affects men. So if you are a male who has gone through this, I would love to connect with you to speak about this. I'm only talking about women because as a woman, I face this, and I can imagine it would be so much more different for a guy. Now, according to the paternal investment theory, this is a theory that I've studied. The quality of fathering that a daughter, the quality of fathering that a daughter receives affects their future expectations of males. So, some women sort of learn subconsciously to accept less in relationships, and that's due to their own diminished self-esteem. And they usually believe that they must work for love, or it may not be worthy at all, or they may not feel worthy at all. And as a result, they go down the wrong path in love. And it happens. And as they get older, because the women don't have this sort of sense of how to develop a healthy relationship because of what they've seen in the past, it takes longer to figure out who we are, have that innate self-worth, and how to explore that, male-female exchange. So we end up seeking for validation, or, we turn to attention-seeking behaviors, consciously and subconsciously. A lot of these behaviors are not known on the surface. It is subconscious that it happens. And then, obviously when you sit down and think about it, you're like, whoa, I did this for X, Y, and Z reason. There's also, with women, there's submissive behaviors. So, sexually or in relationships, they're scared to lose relationships or, friendships. And as a result, they are more submissive. And it's quite primitive, not quite primitive. It's something that happens a lot in my culture as well. I've seen that women are more submissive towards these things. And, there's also this distorted expectation of men and masculinity as well by women who go through fatherlessness, that, the expectation of what a man's supposed to be versus what the reality is, because of not having that male figure in their lives. And I've done that, and I've spoken to many people who have, and they've felt the same. They have had a warped sense of what they should expect in a relationship from a man. Now, studies have also linked fatherlessness to teenage pregnancies, early teenage pregnancies, and because they are likely to have intercourse before the age of 16, and at that time they will forego contraception. And that is probably one of the biggest reasons of teenage pregnancies, is that lack of the male figure. And studies have shown that it's more so prominent in the US and Africa. So it affects genders in different ways, obviously. It's now, like I said, I'm not going to do justice if I start sitting here being like, oh, this is how men feel, this is what men go through. Like, no, I'm not going to say that. So if you are a man who has gone through this, please reach out to me. I want to know what's on your mind and what you've been through. So now with others, you find that I don't see enough, and I don't know what you guys think, but I don't see enough advertisements on TV and the radio. I don't see enough support services for fatherless children. I don't see enough trained counselors in fatherlessness or direct support lines. And I think we need more of that, because if I were to pick up the phone, who am I going to call beyond Blue? That's probably the first number that I'm going to call. Now, with the media, I've also noticed that when I'm watching TV, they're always portraying those nuclear happy families, and these characters and the attachments they show are like, they're forming ideologies of what a father should be. And as positive as they are a lot of times, it's also hard for people who don't have dads, because they're sitting there watching like, is this what a dad's supposed to be? Is this what is real and what is not? And I find that media has a very big role to play in the way that we perceive ourselves, and we perceive what our relationship could or could have, would have been like with a father. And it's hard to decipher what it's supposed to be like, because there are so many different, opinions and styles of parenting. Now, I have received a few comments from people. So I'm going to read this out to you. So Adrian says, evening, some mothers make it really difficult to co-parent and see your children. In turn, if it's toxic and nasty in the household, like you said, unfortunately you feel pushed away, and the best thing to do is be at distance. These are struggles fathers deal with impacting their mental health immensely. I tolerate and deal a lot for my children to be in my life. Fathers should never give up on their children. It's a hard topic. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Adrian. It really is. And like I said, I agree with you. There are mothers who do that. And it is despicable. There are mothers who do that. They make it very difficult for their children to see their father. I don't agree with that. I absolutely do not. And that is a whole topic for a whole new show. And if you want to share it, I am totally down for you coming on the show and sharing your story, because I have seen this myself so many times. I had a lovely comment by Turid Hopwood. Please go and get therapy for yourself before spreading this rubbish. By the way, stop seducing your audience. I can't help it if they feel seduced, honey, but I suggest you stop making comments like that, because it's not helping. I'm here to actually talk about fatherlessness. And if you don't like what I'm talking about, Turin, you can get the hell off my live stream. I'm here telling people what fatherlessness and how it can affect people. If you don't like it, I don't understand why you're still sitting here watching it. There's the X button up the top and you can leave, girlfriend. You don't need to be here. I'm not tolerating anybody's bullshit, and you are one of those people. You are exactly the reason why some people who have mental health issues don't speak up, because people like you are bullies, and I'm calling you out right now. Don't you ever be coming up on my show talking shit, because I'm not going to have it. If you want to be a bully, you can send me a message and we can go at it right then and there. But for now, I am telling everybody what the effects of fatherlessness are. And obviously, you don't know what that feels like. That is why you are making ridiculous comments. Adrian says, have some respect. If you don't like listening, then leave the stream. Have you been watching long enough? I don't know, Adrian. She probably hasn't. But the reason I'm calling her out is because she's been commenting throughout this whole show, and I don't agree with it. If you don't like what I'm saying, then you don't have to be here. I'm reaching out to the people who have been through fatherlessness, who are victims, and I am trying to validate their pain, because only we know what that feels like, not you. Anita says, love the insights you've brought up, Shalina. This helped me in understanding how heavy it really is not to have a father in a person's life. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anita, for watching. There is a lot more that I can say about fatherlessness and how it can affect you. But these are the things that I've been sort of researching today and thinking about, and it does bring up memories. It brings up memories for me. And this is not me trying to be a victim here. This is me talking about my experience, because I know the pain. If 20 million children in this world are living without their fathers, that is 20 million children who are sitting there in pain, wondering where their fathers are and why they are not there, because fatherlessness is a global crisis. I'm telling you that now, it is. And the more attention we pay to it, the less children there are going to be who are going to be suffering, because there are too many. There are absolutely too many children suffering. So if this has brought up anything for you today, anybody who's watching, if this has brought up anything for you, here are some national helplines: Men's Referral Line, Men's Line Australia, No to Violence, Relationships Australia, Westnet, Lifeline, Kids Helpline, and Beyond Blue. If you want to talk in private, you can send me a PM and we can have a chat about this. I'm never, never, never too far away. If you are a fatherless child and want to share your story, bring it on, let's do it. If you are a father who's not been able to reach out to your child because your ex-partner is keeping you away from them, reach out to me. I am not gender biased here. I'm not picking one gender over the other. I'm only talking about my experience and what the effects of fatherlessness can be like. And there's a lot more. This is just the start of it. But this can at least give you an insight as to why some of us behave the way we do. And hopefully I've validated your pain, or hopefully you feel like there's been some sort of comfort and that your pain has been recognized. And, if you want to learn more, I am never hard to find. So send me a PM and let's get talking. And if you want to be on my show, which I'd love to have you on my show, all you have to do is go onto Facebook, Conversations with Shalina, You can be a guest. Email me, shalina@sedate.co. Never hard to find. And Sedate the Poet, YouTube, hit me up. Instagram, hit me up. I'm right there. There's more to come. So in the next week's episode, what I'm going to talk about is if you have never seen your dad, like I'd never seen him and I rocked up at his house, which I think a lot of children have, I'm going to talk to you about, and to parents about how you can prepare yourself and your child, because this is probably a very crucial moment for a child. It really is. It's not, it's not something you ever forget. So meeting the parent for the first time, you don't ever forget it. I still haven't forgot it, and I don't think I ever will, because that literally shaped how I was going to be for the next couple of months in breakdown mode. That's what happens. I'm being real and raw with you. So until next time, and if you have any nasty comments that you want to leave me, send it to me. I'll be right here waiting to discuss it with you. So thank you for joining, and I will see you in the next episode. See you later.